Welcome, everybody. This is Cultural Creations. I'm Paula Ludwig with the Atlantic Institute. We are a nonprofit organization who promotes positive dialogue between interfaith, religion, meeting your next door neighbor. Our vision is of a peaceful world. I am going to show you a short 2-minute video that explains this better than I can. Just 1 second. All right.
The Atlantic Institute is a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting harmonious coexistence between peoples of various cultures, faiths, and backgrounds. We seek this goal through peaceful dialogue, education initiatives, and community organization. Our dialogue events bring together experts, community and faith leaders, and knowledge seekers to address social issues that affect us all. We feel dialogue is the most important element in peaceful coexistence, so we try and maintain several panel discussions, TED Talk events, and book clubs throughout the year. These events touch on social issues, race relations, and cultural understanding and are a mainstay of our programming. The Atlantic Institute's education events are extremely important to our mission of understanding. We want to promote socially forward critical thinking to students of all ages. To that end, we have developed programs that seek to grow the creative spirit of students and help them think about their communities and the world around them. Our Future Leaders of Dialogue event brings together nominated elite students to learn from each other as well as political and business leaders. Our art and essay contest gives students a theme about important societal issues and allows them to create wonderful works of art and writing while steering their minds towards improving their world. We're always seeking ways to educate youths and adults in order to make a peaceful world for all of us. Our community events are designed to transform neighbors into friends and groups of people into a community. By associating with other nonprofits or by our own initiative, we are always trying to discover new avenues to improve our neighborhoods, places of worship, and community centers. We host cooking demonstrations of food from other cultures, work with various nonprofits to help elevate the work of others, and try to find a way to make the lives of those who are disenfranchised or marginalized better. Building a more peaceful world starts in our backyards, so we are dedicated to improving our communities and associations. The Atlantic Institute is always seeking like-minded volunteers and collaborators. If you would like to learn more, find volunteer opportunities, or just want to chat with our staff, please visit our website at www.atlanticinstitutesc.org or follow us on Facebook. We will never run out of fun, educational, peaceful events, so come join us to help make this world a better place full of understanding and unity.
All right. Trying to get out of this. All right. Stop share. There we go. All right. We have a few more people coming in. But I am now going to turn this over to Karen, and she's going to explain this wonderful artwork behind me.
Thank you, Paula. My name's Karen Wicks. I'm an artist. I live in the UK in the Midlands. I've come to share with you some of my process, really. So if you're interested in doing something like this from home, it's maybe something that you could try. I'm very keen on art for well-being and sort of the idea that creativity is something that everybody's got. So for me, this process is quite a nice one because it's not something where you've got to, buy lots of expensive equipment. Everything that I make, I do from my dining table, which is where I'm currently sitting and speaking to you now. So what I've done is I've put together some videos, some instructional videos, which will talk you through and show some examples of the images that I've created. And then it takes this sort of step-by-step process through the equipment that I use and how it works. And then I've got some images at the end just to share with you of the types of prints that I create. So I use recycled packaging to create my plates. So I try and be quite sustainable in that front. So I wanted to just sort of take you through that step by step. The image that you can see behind Paula on the screen that she was sharing earlier is one that I've demonstrated when I've done these online classes, but my theme tends to be more in terms of architecture and derelict places, which I'll talk about in the slideshow in a moment. So my plan really is to sort of take you through the process, show you some examples, and then if you've got any questions as we go through, if you want to pop those into the chat, and then at the end we can, Paula and I between us can probably field the questions and just answer anything that you've got to ask about this. So if that's okay with everybody, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share a PowerPoint screen to you all, so because that's where the videos are, and let me just share that to you now. And after the class is over, what will happen is I can share the link to this resource to you as well. So that should be hopefully helpful if you want to rewatch it or if you want to share it with anybody else who might be interested. So let me just start this up so you can see it properly. There we go. So what I quite like about this process is it does use some quite simple materials, which I'll talk you through. There is a list on the slide that you can see there of the materials that I use to make the prints that I'm producing. So you can always come back to this afterwards if you want to. So don't feel that you need to make any notes, but I'm going to stop talking myself now and I'm going to go over to the audio on the slideshow itself. So I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to start sharing the slides. So just, Paula, can you just give me a shout if you can't hear the audio from the PowerPoint, and then I can address that. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Karen Wicks and I'm a printmaker from the Midlands. My practice began in lockdown. It came out of originally drawing from derelict buildings. I've always been interested in the surfaces and the intrigue of
Karen, did you
finding abandoned
share the
places.
share audio button? Because the sound is very
sort of
low.
using printmaking, I was drawing. Hello, I'm Karen Wicks and I'm a printmaker from the Midlands. My practice began in lockdown. It came out of originally drawing from derelict buildings. I've always been interested in the surfaces and the intrigue of finding abandoned places. But prior to sort of using printmaking, I was drawing and using mixed media to capture these buildings. During lockdown, obviously we were restricted to materials and availability of different things. So I started to do some chronograph prints, initially on mount board, which is what most people would normally associate a chronograph print with. And then just out of interest in different surfaces, I tried using packaging and orange juice cartons, Tetrapak cartons, and also paracetamol boxes just to see if the surface would render any good results. And the first few prints that I found actually reproduced tones and line in a more interesting way, I think, than the drawings that I was producing. So these are some of the early ones that I drew. They're from, initially from military buildings was the first sort of set of studies that I did. I normally start by photographing a place, so my initial interest will come from actually walking around and experiencing somewhere firsthand. Obviously during lockdown that wasn't possible, so people were sharing on Instagram different images of places they'd gone on their daily walk. So my first set of work really was about looking at pillboxes and those sorts of structures. And that's really where the practice came from. So once I found that you could print from everyday packaging and actually yield quite a good image, that's what's interested me in the last 3 years to try and develop that a bit more. So I'm here today just to show you some basic techniques. Initially, the first one will be looking at Tetrapak. So this is Tetrapak, so it's what you have your juice packaged in, things like oat milk often as well in this sort of carton. What you're looking for is the silver surface on the inside, if you can see that shining there. That's what kind of helps with printmaking, because it's a surface that's shiny and it means that the ink will wipe off. So that's what you're kind of going to need to collect initially. I've also used these, which is, these are takeaway lids that you get in the supermarket. They normally come in a rectangle shape. One side is card and one side is foil. Whilst not technically a Tetra Pak, it yields a similar result to that. So if you wanted to, you could try this. If not, just get yourself a juice carton, cut it open, flatten it out and dry it, and then we're ready to start. I'm going to talk you through the equipment that you'll need at different stages of the process. So this is the things that you're going to need to collect together so that you can create a plate. So what you'll need is a selection of Tetrapak. So this is a juice carton and it's been flattened, opened out, flattened and dried, or you can use a takeaway lid. These work well as well. So either of those surfaces are fine. If you want an image to draw from, then print something off. If you're going to draw freehand, that's totally fine as well. I recommend a ruler if you're drawing things with angles. I often use this one. And if you wanted to trace your image through, you can. So some tracing paper, or if you wanted to use carbon paper, that's perfectly fine. Also, a biro is also quite handy. I find that useful just to sketch straight onto the Tetrapak and then work over afterwards. So this is the equipment that you'll need to gather together to make your plate. I suggest a cutting mat. If you want to get yourself a scalpel, this is a really good set actually. Those of you in the UK, Poundland, £1.50 for all of that. So a decent scalpel. An engineer's scribe is what I use to draw into the plate. I know I've been asked this quite often on Instagram. These are really cheap, so £3 if you look on eBay. I use this one with 2 ends. It doesn't really matter about this end, I don't use it, but I've found this is a really durable scribe, and it doesn't really scratch the surface away too harshly, which is kind of what you need. I've also recently found these as well, engineer's scribe, so you can try either of those. And you might also want to create texture on your plate. I use a nail file. You can also use sandpaper, depending what it is you're trying to create. But those are the things that you're going to need to use to draw into your Tetrapak. Before you start working on your plate, it's worth thinking just about the surface itself. So Tetrapak is basically a sandwich of card. There's a layer of plastic in here somewhere, then there's foil on the top. So when you tear it, you can see there you've got the card showing, then you've got the edge where the foil is. You're always going to have the folds in a Tetrapak print, and it's just whether you want to incorporate that into your design. You certainly can't get away from the folds showing in your print, so it's worth just having that in mind. I quite like to sort of exploit the fact that you can use these rips as part of the design. So obviously when you come to ink this, the more porous the surface is, the more ink it's going to soak in. So where the cardboard's showing here, if I was to just ink this and print it without doing anything else now, what I'm going to end up with is a light grey print where the surface of the foil is, because it never wipes completely clean. So I'm going to have a light grey print. You're then going to have a shadow where the edges of these folds are, so that all the creases and folds that are in this already are going to show. And then you're going to end up with a black line where these cardboard tears are. So it's just worth thinking about that before you actually start plotting out your design. Now what I've done here just to get started is I've just drawn the design on very quickly, just using a biro pen, just so I can see where my lines are. And then I'm going to move on to starting to actually draw into the surface. One thing again to bear in mind before I start to demonstrate how this works when you're drawing into it with these sharper instruments, you need to be able to press in fairly hard into the surface, because how this works is where the groove is that you create by drawing, that's where the ink will sit. So if you just press on and just sort of tickle the surface with your scribe, you're not going to get a very decent print. So you do need to apply quite a bit of pressure. You will see on this, if I just quickly show you now, if I just press on sort of slightly here, then press on hard, you should be able to see that on the camera, hopefully, the differences in those lines. You can see a precise line where I've pressed on hard. If you don't press on hard enough, you won't really see the scribe on the surface there. So it's just worth, if you want to just use a scrap piece plain on there first, just to sort of see how the material works. The reason this works well is it's got quite a bit of give in it. I think it's probably the layer in the sandwich combination of materials here. You'll find when you're drawing in with the scribe that you feel a bit of a bounce back, so you can create quite a nice groove. But it's just worth having that in mind before I move on to the next step, where I actually demonstrate using the scribe how you would work into this. And then the other thing just to have in mind as well is when you come to work on your plate, what you want to be looking at as well when you're sort of planning your approach to this. I'm just using this image here. Where you've got blacks or very dark areas to your design, that will be where you're going to cut and peel. So you're basically going to cut away the top layer and just reveal this cardboard underneath, because that's porous and that will soak in the ink. So I'm just looking at my design already and thinking, okay, I've got quite a few shadow areas. I might cut that away totally to black. Certainly on the shadow on this door, most of this door is quite dark, so I'm probably going to cut away most of this and some of this background area here. So it is worth just having a little look at your image and just saying, okay, so tonally, that's what you're looking at, is the tone. Where are my darkest areas? Where am I likely to cut away? And the rest of it is going to be created by drawing line. So here we have the equipment you need for inking. It is a messy process, so I would recommend gloves. I just use basic marigolds, but you can get these disposable ones, which are quite handy as well. In terms of material that you need to gather, we use stiff scrim for inking, rubbing the ink into the plate. So you will probably need to look online to buy this. Printmaker supplies, art shops, fabric suppliers. It's a stiff scrim. It's got dressing on it still. It's not the flexible stuff. So that's what you need for that. For rags, I just use old t-shirts cut up, so that's perfectly fine. You've probably got those lying around somewhere. And cotton buds, another really useful tip. These are really good for doing the highlights on your plate, so get yourself some cotton buds at the ready. And then just in terms of more specialist equipment and materials, really, I do get asked quite often if I varnish the plates when I do Tetrapak. I don't tend to, because of the surface itself. It's quite wipeable, so you don't really need to seal it. However, I do tend to use this version of varnish. Occasionally I might use this to put marks onto the plate, you know, so I'm going to show it anyway. It's Rustin's French Polish, so you can get that from Amazon. It's about £7 or £8. So that's varnish. And then the actual inks that you can use Acua Intaglio inks, that's these. They're very thin. I personally don't really like them as much, but if your work is quite linear and you don't want a lot of tone, they do go into the grooves of the plate really well, so you could try these. They're nice to ink with and nice to wipe off, so that's one brand of ink that you might try. And then this is my absolute favourite brand, so Caligo Safe Wash. They're eco-friendly, they're washable inks. I use the relief ink and not the etching ink, because I like to keep a lot of ink on the plate, because I like to create a lot of tone. You don't have to use the relief ink, you can use etching ink, it's entirely your choice, but I find this is probably my favourite ink, so I would definitely recommend that one. And then you just need something to spread your ink on with. I just cut up bits of old mount board. As long as you've got a straight edge to scrape the ink on, that's fine. Some people use a credit card, an old credit card. That type of thing will be fine. So that's everything you need to gather together, ready to ink. So before you start inking, just make sure that you've got your gloves on and you've got your workspace set out ready. Just need to make sure you protect the surface you're working on with. I just use newsprint or an old print. Make sure you've got your ink, your scrim, rags to wipe off again, piece of card to put the ink on with, and then if you want to use cotton buds, I'll be demonstrating with those in a minute. There's not much else to really do in preparation. I think that's probably everything. Just remember that the ink goes on first, scraped on with the card, and then it goes in circular movements with the scrim first. And that basically is to rub the ink into all of the grooves in the plate. So it's worth going over a couple of times with that, and you need to press on quite hard to get it to go in the grooves. Then you need to then rub the first layer of ink off again, so your excess ink. Again, this is with the t-shirt fabric, so just circular movements again to kind of clean that off. And then I normally then change to another rag, a clean one, to then do the final wiping off. Now, it's obviously up to you. I'm going to demonstrate the way that I ink my plates. I tend to leave ink on the plate on purpose because I want the tone and the textures on the plate itself. You could rub your plate right back and have just the lines left that you've drawn and the black areas. So feel free to wipe away as much or as little as you wish to. I'm going to demonstrate this now, so you'll be able to see exactly what I mean. So here we've got the equipment we need for printing. I've got a spray water bottle that I use to dampen the paper, and then I blot it in newsprint. Some people immerse the paper in water fully and then blot it afterwards on blotting paper or newsprint. I personally don't do that. I try and just spray one side of the paper and then I'll blot it. So again, that's your choice, but that was something I found quite useful. In terms of paper, when you're first starting out with this, I was using 300 GSM white card. I'm not using the Fabriano, Somerset, those types of papers. And actually, you know, in terms of the detail that you get from a print onto this kind of card, it picks up the mid-tones really well, and it's quite a slightly harder surface than some of the Somerset and Fabriano papers. So if you're just starting out with this, I'd recommend you give that a try. It picks up more of the marks. However, if you're more of a sort of professional printmaker, you obviously might have access to the Fabriano, Somerset type papers to use instead. But this card, you can get this on Amazon for a pack of 50. It's about £8, so it's pretty good value. And obviously you're going to need some newsprint, so you buy this in sheets and you can just tear it down or cut it down to size. I'm going to quickly talk you through presses that you might have access to in terms of your printmaking at home. During lockdown, this was my press. It's a little bit rusty and tatty looking now. It's a pasta press, and obviously you have to work quite small on something like this, so I was using little matchboxes in here and that worked a treat. What you're going to need to get hold of is some 3 to 4 millimeter felt, so that you can create 2 pieces of felt to put your paper and the print between. But if you've got access to nothing else, this is an ideal starter, and you basically put it through the flat lasagna set in there and just wind the handle through. So very basic lo-fi printmaking. You can use a pasta press. There is a 3D printed small press here in the Open Press project. This one is available online, so if you wanted to work even smaller still, you can get this at a reasonable price online. But my absolute favourite press is this one. It's the X-Cut Express. It's a die cutting press, so it's not meant for intaglio printmaking. It's meant for die cutting, and it comes in this format where you fold the 2 sides down and then you put the bed on there and you can put it through the press. But as you can see, it's got 2 metal rollers in there, and then you can change the pressure with the dial on the top. So this is ideal for home printmaking if you can get hold of one. They're no longer made by the range. They were originally about £60 to buy new, but they've gone up second hand in price to double that now because a lot of printmakers have discovered that you can use these. There are other videos online of people who've tested other craft presses, so I would suggest you might want to have a look at some of those if you want to see what else you can get. But in order to work with this method, you do need a press that's got metal rollers to give you the pressure. I'm now going to print the plate. I'm going to use the Xcut Express for this. The first thing you need to do is just dampen your paper. So, as I said before, some people submerge their paper in water completely. I just tend to use a spray bottle and spray the front of mine. So, just give it sort of 4 or 5 sprays and then blot it using a piece of newsprint. And that just ensures the surface of the paper is damp enough just to receive the detail on the plate. So I just tend to leave that for a second, just let that soak in. So the craft press is set up with a piece of felt already. So this is quite thick felt that I use for the bed on this one. It's about 5mm thick, so that you need to try and source that if you do manage to get hold of a second-hand Xcut Express. I got this off eBay. And then you just make sure you've got your bed ready and some newsprint on there as well. Now, some printmakers, well most printmakers I think, tend to put their plate on next and then the paper. I tend to work upside down. I don't quite know why, but I just find it easier that way because it helps me place the print. So up to you which way around you print, obviously. So I'm going to put paper down first, then I'm going to get my plate and pop that down where it needs to go. I'm not the cleanest of printmakers, so you probably shouldn't learn bad habits from me. Then you put your newsprint on top and your felt. Okay, and then we just put it through the press. The good thing with the Xcut is you can change the pressure. I have got a Sizzix Big Shot Pro as well, that's quite good for A3 size prints. On that one there is no pressure dial, however you can pack the print out with paper underneath, so you can still get a good print using that machine as well. But this is just a good one because you can increase the pressure here if you need to, if the print doesn't come out that well. And then it's newsprint off and then peel away. Okay, so there we've got the proof print from that one. And you can see from your first print, it gives you some ideas then as to what you need to do next time. Now you can see on this one, I haven't inked quite as well in these grooves down here because the ink hasn't gone in. So I know the next time I print this now, I need to ink a bit more in these lines. I might want to take a bit more tone away on the building. But I quite like the way it's partially printed at this end. It's not quite got the same density as the black there. So your test proof's always a useful one. And you can go back to your plate again and work out if there's anything you need to tweak on there, or is it in fact something that you need to tweak with your inking, in which case it is on this piece here.
And then what I've done here is I've just shown some examples of some other prints that have been done using Tetrapak, just so you can see some examples of other images also. So the thing that happens with Tetrapak plates is the folds can be used as part of the composition. I tend to, with the buildings that I use for my designs, I'll cut away the silhouette of the actual building itself, and I'll try and utilise the folds that come at the bottom of the package, so you can keep those on your plate if you want to, as in this example. And then here's another one where I've kept the folds at the bottom, and I tend to keep that shape in my prints quite often as well. And I quite like to keep the torn edge. So if you remember at the start, I was talking about how the torn edge will pick up that black line. So that's something else that you can utilise as well if you want to. And here's another one. So this one's 2 packages stuck together. So you can see where the folds are in this bottom section of this bottom part of the plate that's been used. And that was basically 2 cartons that I've just cut back together again so that I can make a plate where the lines kind of go in different directions. And again, I've just tried to think about the silhouette on the back of the building and the other sort of building shapes that I can cut away just using the packaging itself. So that I thought I'd show you that example also. This is quite a simple one. Again, you can see the fold going down the middle of that. So that's from the carton itself. But again, I cut away the sort of silhouette of the building and then the trees there. But I do quite like using that tear. So I tend to use the torn approach where it comes to whether it's landscape in the background or sometimes in the foreground as well. And also in this one, I think it's probably a good example just to talk to you about the wiping off process. So in the pre-recorded video, you saw me put the ink on and then wipe some away with the cotton buds a little bit more. So in this example, you can see where the lighter tones are. That's been done through removing more ink with cotton buds to make it selectively lighter in places. If you were to just completely wipe off your plate with a rag, completely and press on really hard, you would only just get one tone across the plate. So I tend to vary my tone and use that slightly thicker ink that I've talked to you about, so that I can get that variety of tones in the landscapes that I'm trying to create. And then I thought I'd finish with this one. So this is another image that's been made just using a takeaway lid. So if you remember, I talked about those circular lids that you can use. So they normally come as rectangles quite often, but you can get them online. They're pie, like foil trays for pies, and the lid itself is a circle. So again, the same principles with this one. The top edge of that was created using tearing, and then the house itself was drawn on using the scribe that you saw me use in the demonstration. But actually, I thought I'd just quickly linger on this one as the last image as such, because all of the tone that's on there, that black line across the top, was because the cardboard was revealed when I tore it. So that created that sort of black shape at the top of the image. But the rest of that was done by basically inking the plate and then only wiping bits of the ink off and using the rag to sort of create marks on the plate. So that's something you can do as well, which is quite nice with Tetra Pak. You can leave more or less ink on the plate and then work into it while it's on there, which is what I tend to do quite often as well. So I just wanted to show you this one as well. And then finally, just to let you know, there is a link to the PowerPoint that I just shared with you. But in that folder as well, it's a Dropbox folder, because this is quite a large file. There's also a demonstration in there of the fish image that's behind Paula currently on her screen view. So if you do click into that folder, you'll see what I've just shared with you, but there's also a demo that I did in one of my online classes, which takes you through, again, step by step with me demonstrating how to make the plate with the fish and how to ink it and take some of the ink off to print it so it looks like the result that's behind Paula just there. And then this one on the left here is a more recent print that I've done. I've been doing quite a few prints based on barns and rural scenes. So this one again was just another small piece of carton with the fold that you can see down the centre. But you can see on that one the various tones that are on there. Some of that's been done, the black again, through the tearing away the top layer, but the rest of it's been done through, you know, being selective about removing more or less of the ink, so you get that tone. So I hope that's been interesting to see. If you want to see any more of my work, I've got a website that's called ghostbuildings.co.uk. And if any of you use Instagram, I'm on there as well, and that's my handle on Instagram. So I'm going to stop sharing, Paula, if that's okay, and then we can have a look if there's any questions that people have been asking. And apologies if any fireworks go off in the background. It's bonfire night here, so there's been quite a lot of fireworks going off while that was happening.
So we have one question or a couple of questions in the chat right now. One is, do you just lean less on the blade when cutting out to only cut the silver lining off the plate to make the area black?
Yeah, so I mean, what I would advise, if you decide to have a go at this, just get a little scrap piece first and just practice your pressure, because it's the same with the drawing, with the scribe, the sharp tool. You sort of have to practice how heavy or light-handed you need to be with pressing into the surface, because essentially with the plate, as you saw from that demo, the ink has got to sit within it, so you've got to press on to a certain degree to get the groove deep enough for the ink to stay in there. And then the same with the scalpel. Sometimes you can be quite heavy-handed to start with, so you might end up cutting all the way through, which obviously isn't what you want. You want to sort of put that half pressure on so you can just score the surface of the silver foil, and then you just lift the corner and you can peel that off. So it is worth just doing a little tester piece first and just trying out your cutting skills and trying out some different mark making with your scribe, and then ink and print that. If you're going to give it a go, just do that first to give yourself a bit of a trial run.
And then they want, can you please pop the Dropbox link into the chat?
Yeah, of course, I'll do that as well.
They want to know what happens if you cut all the way through. Can you stick a piece of paper on the back?
Yeah, so the thing with Tetra Pak, it's quite forgiving really, because you can also rework your plate. So when you saw with that one that I demonstrated in the pre-recorded video, if there was a part on that wasn't detailed enough, I'll just wipe the plate clean and I'll draw in a bit more, and then I'll print it again. Same with if you cut through, you can just put tape on the back, so that will just basically cover up the hole. I mean, if you make a hole in the plate by accident, all that's going to happen there is when you ink it, it's going to come out white on your print, because there'll be no ink there, because there's no plate there. So you can find, I find and have found through just messing about with this process, you find more interesting effects happen through happy accident. And I think if you're open-minded to that, that's why I like printmaking. It is very much a curious process. It's not as tight, I suppose, as making a representational drawing. If you're happy to just let accidents unfold, you find that's how my work's evolved, really. It's very much been about accidents and just seeing what happens if, so if you have an instance where you cut through something completely, I would say print it anyway, have a look how it looks, but you can repair and you can add other materials over it if you've made a bit of a mistake, and then just see how that looks. But what you probably will find, and I found, is that the sort of mistakes as such, or the unplanned things, create some quite interesting effects. That's what happened with that round takeaway lid image that I showed you with the bothy on it and the mountainside, because at that point I'd got tendonitis in my thumb and I was in a wrist support, so I couldn't really wipe, because wiping the ink off, it is quite physical, like it takes a while to rub everything off. And because I couldn't do that with my hand because I've got a wrist support on, I was using an electric toothbrush to ink it. So I thought, well, I'm sure that might work. And then I was using a shoe polisher to try and take the ink off, because I couldn't do this motion with my hand. And what happened with that was it left quite a lot of interesting marks, and I printed it and I thought, oh, I really like that, so I'm going to try and do that a bit more. So I think it's a really nice process just to be open-minded and just playing, really. I think that's what it's akin to, isn't it? It's like grown-up playing, really. I'm just going to find that link for you guys while you're thinking about other questions, just so I can put it in the chat. Just bear with me as well. Yeah, it's quite a large file, this, which is the reason that it's a Dropbox folder and not can't send a file transfer or anything like that. Let me just find the chat, put that in. Oh, there's a big long set of questions here. Paula, shall I read these questions out if you're happy for me to?
Oh, there's one more before it. There was a little yellow window. How was it created? And it looked yellow or brownish. How was that created in one of them?
Okay, yeah, so that is gold leaf. So I tend to, in my more recent work, I've been looking at how you illustrate that these derelict places have still got a life even though they're empty. So I tend to use gold leaf for that process. So whoever asked the question about the yellow window, it doesn't pick up so well on the scan, but it's gold. So what happens is on those prints, when you move the print, it catches the light and it shines or not. So it makes it look like there's a light still on in the building. So I use gold leaf process for those in the windows, but that's tended to then become a bit of a signature as well. So quite a lot of my more recent prints, I do put the gold on as well.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and look at the rest of the questions.
Yeah, Chris has got some questions here, so I can, if you're happy, Chris, I'll read them out one by one and answer them as well. Okay. Is the printing ink toxic? Not to my knowledge, I don't think it is. So I think it's fine to use. You can use it in school situations as well with children. It's water washable, so it's oil based. Both of them, I think the Acure ink's soy based, and then the Caligo Safe Wash is oil based, but they've made it water washable, so it's quite pupil friendly if you want to work with children with it as well. Have I tried 2-color or multicolour prints? I have. I really don't like colour though, Chris, unfortunately. I don't know whether I'm some sort of moody goth at heart or something, I don't know, but I tend to quite like just working in black. I have put colour on things, but I just, in which case you can make a plate for a particular colour and do more than one plate if you wanted to do it that way. You can also ink your plate with colour, so you could do, if an area was blue, for instance, you can get a cotton bud and ink that area just in blue, and then another cotton bud and maybe an ink an area. You can ink locally on the plate and put different colours on. I'm just trying to think in that Dropbox if the demonstration shows that or not. It may or may not, I can't remember. But yes, you can use colour, obviously. It's just my preference to use black quite a lot. How quickly do I need to print? Sorry, let me just scroll down. How quickly do I need to print once I've applied the ink, and do I need to reapply ink for each print? So yes, the second part of that question, every time you ink a plate and then you print it onto the dampened paper, it takes everything off the plate. Very rarely you can print it a second time and get a ghost image, which is called a ghost print, but it's always very pale, so you won't get much ink left, because the process of putting it through those metal rollers, the pressure that is exerted is quite heavy, so it will take off most of what's on the plate, so you have to ink every time, which is why with my work I don't tend to do many additions, because I tend to ink and then every time I print it, it looks different, because I'll mess about with the ink on the plate, and so it doesn't look the same each time, unlike if you did say a lino print, for instance, where it would always look the same. How quickly do you need to print? Because it's oil-based or soy-based ink, you've got about 40-45 minutes really within which to ink it and print it. I've done a set where I've inked like 5 plates, and then in the time it's taken me to ink them all, then they're still wet enough to print through. So it doesn't dry solid. It's not like acrylic paint that's just going to set really quickly. So you've got some time to work on the plate before you print it. Even if you leave it and don't clean your plates in between, so say you finish printing and you just don't clean your plate, leave it as it is, it still stays a bit tacky on the plate anyway, so it doesn't ever really seem to fully dry. But yeah, that's why it's quite nice material to use. Next question is, how many prints can I make from one plate, and does the quality degrade over time? Now the Tetra Pak surface is quite sustainable in terms of how it holds the line. You'll probably get about 15-20 prints, Chris, before you need to start thinking about getting rid of the plate, because it does degrade just through the process of each time you're squashing it down further and further when you're pressing it through the press. So what you'll find is the quality of the line gradually gets less and less dark. So your first print's always your best one, but as you know probably, but the more you print the plate, the less defined the line is. But I've done series of up to 20 prints with the Tetra Pak, and it's held the line pretty well. So it's a nice material to use for that purpose. If you use a different, because I also use things like flattened boxes, paracetamol boxes, other things like that I've tried to use in the same way that I've demonstrated today. Those are variable. You get less prints out of those, 5 to 10 maybe in a run, before they've got too flattened. But I think because the Tetra Pak's got that foil layer to it, it seems to retain the quality of the line better. Why doesn't it work with a lino press? Mainly from a mechanical reason, because the lino press is pressing down. So even if you if you think about the lino process, you're just trying to get the surface ink. You're not trying to get into those grooves that you've cut with a lino tool. This is the opposite. So lino is relief printmaking, because you're trying to get the ink off the top of the plate. This is intaglio printmaking, so you're doing the opposite. You're rubbing the surface clean, and you want to get into the grooves, and the paper needs to go down in there to get all those marks from where you've drawn. So a lino press, the pressure that you get exerted down on a lino isn't going to push that paper in. So you've got to go through something with rollers to get the weight to go down to push the paper into the grooves on the plate, which is why it's a shame, because quite often printmakers who've had a go with lino want to do this, but then you can't use the same press, and you can't use a spoon on the back or any other methods really. I've tried most ways without, I've not bought an etching press because I can't afford one. So I'm very much kind of, okay, what else is around that I can use that will give me the same effect? And really those craft presses are the best solution. So I can see there's another question here about presses, so I'll just talk a little bit more about that. The best solution is, if you've got nothing at all, get a pasta press, because they're about £10. You can get a second-hand one. And then if you just get 2 pieces of felt and use the lasagna setting, and if you look on my Instagram, I've got a quick clip about how you can convert it so you can roll your print across through horizontally. It's really quick. But you can get the pressure from a pasta press is enough to get the pressure for a print. But obviously you can only work so big because of the width of the pasta press. If you can get a scrapbooking press, they're called craft presses or die cutting presses. If you can get those, there's various makes of those, there's quite a few different ones. The mechanics of those will suit this process, because you've got 2 metal rollers, they exert quite heavy pressure on the material going through. The only thing you're going to have to do is make sure you've got a bed, which is the bit at the bottom that you put the paper on. Some of the presses that you can buy have got that anyway, or you can make one with a bit of wood. and then you've got that felt that you're going to have to get on the top. And again, if you look for, I'll put it in the chat so you can make a note, but if any of you use Facebook, there's a group on there and it's called Craft Press Printmakers. And if you look that up, if you're not already a member of that, that's the whole purpose of that group, is to look at how to use a craft press, which is what I've just described, to use it for home printmaking. So if you have a look on there, there's various people have trialed various different makes of press to see how they can use them, but they are the best and cheapest way, I think, of accessing printmaking from your dining table, where you don't need to go to a studio and use an etching press. So I think if you keep your eye out for a second-hand one of those, that would be good. I know people are from various places, UK, Ireland, USA. The X-Cut Express is the one I demonstrated in the video, is no longer made, and they are quite rare second-hand now as well, because I think people have snapped them up. So it's just a case of keeping your eye out for something like that. The other type of make, I'll write these down as well, so in case you want them. X-Cut Express. So that's the one with the dial. I'll write pressure dial next to that so you know which one. And you can print up to A4. The one that I use for bigger prints, because I work up to A3, I've got it's called a Sizzix Big Shot Pro. And that one, you have to get a piece of wood cut and made for the bed, and then you get your felt to go on the top. That one hasn't got a pressure dial. Let me just put that in the chat for you. It hasn't got a pressure dial, but you can put paper underneath your print. So you can basically, I stack up sort of about this thickness of paper underneath, and then I'll put my plate and my paper on top of my felt, and then it's got enough pressure as it goes through the rollers. And that's a really sort of hefty bit of kit, actually. So I would advise, if you want to work bigger and you know that you're going to become addicted to printmaking, because if you once you start this, you probably will become addicted. That's a good machine to keep an eye out for as well. So yeah, the question about can we create a print if you don't own a press? No, probably is the short answer to that one. That's okay, Chris, you're most welcome. Okay, has anyone else got any more questions that they wanted to add to this chat? I think that's all of them, Paula, that we've answered, isn't it? Yeah.
I also had the question if a flower press any good. Oh wow.
No, I'm afraid not, Ruth, because it's not putting enough pressure on. It's the same principle as with the lino press. You're just pressing down with the flower press. It's got to go through the rollers to push that paper down into the grooves. A flower press will just make it sit on top of the paper, so you'll just get a print of what's on the top of the plate and not the grooves itself. So you can get a relief print probably, maybe using a flower press. I don't know, I've never tried it, but I don't think you'll get one for intaglio printmaking, which is what we're doing with this. So yeah, so I guess that's the only downside of this process. If you want to have a go at home, is you just got to get yourself equipped with something with rollers. And I've tried most things with rollers. You can get a thing called a cold press laminator, which is on, I know you can buy them online. They're being pitched as being etching presses. They sell for about £160 in the UK on places like eBay. And with those, they don't work either. So don't be tempted if you go away and think, oh, I'm going to have a go. Don't go and buy one of those, I would suggest, because they've got rubber rollers, and the pressure, I've tried numerous ways. I did buy one thinking, oh, this will be good. But because it's rubber, it absorbs the pressure. So it doesn't, I think you need something with metal rollers, because they've got to be firm enough to put that pressure down. The rubber rollers just don't seem to press the paper into the grooves. And I've tried various different ways of trying to sandwich stuff through a cold press laminator. So those probably don't work. They do work for lino printing. They don't work for this method. And I've tried things like a garden roller. I've tried a mangle. So you can get a mangle that people use to put clothes through. Again, similarly, doesn't really work. It works to a degree, but not brilliantly, because the mangle, if it's been used, the rollers aren't perfectly aligned. So the middle tends to be worn away. So you don't get enough pressure. I've used a dough sheeter, so that's a bigger version of a pasta press. So people who bake, you can get them about this wide, and you put obviously dough through them to make flat bits of sheets of dough. You can get some okay results with those, not as good as a craft press, because it's quite a long roller in the middle, it tends to not have enough pressure. But if again it's a cheaper version, then perhaps getting a craft press. But I would just say keep an eye out secondhand, have a look on Facebook Marketplace or Gumtree or those types of sites, and you'll find some people that have done scrapbooking with these presses, which is what they're for, will probably be getting rid of one, and you can just have a dabble Tetrapak's good for that. And then if you really get into it, then you'll be away. So is that okay? Good.
Any other questions?
No, I think so. I think no questions. Everybody's been bowled over. And the thing is, if you go and try it, what I will say, if you do go away and think, oh, I'm going to have a go, and then you get stuck, because there are various elements to this process where if your paper's not damp enough, the print might not work. If you've not scribed in hard enough, the print might not work. But if you reach out to me on Instagram and just ask me a question about that, or message me and say, I've tried this and this, what would you recommend? I'm happy to help. I think the more people who can be being creative, the better. So yeah, please reach out if you have a go and need some assistance.
This was awesome. This was not what I was expecting at all, but it is very interesting and awesome. I wanted to ask, what about a rolling pin and some good old arm work?
No, still no. It won't work. Again, I've tried. I mean, short of driving my car over these things, which is what I did consider doing. So I thought, yeah, surely you could just get in your car and put some felt down and then roll over it with your car. But again, I'll report back if that does actually work. I've not tried it. No, I think the rolling pin situation, again, it's similar to when you hand burnish with a lino print. So you can use the back of a spoon or a barren, and it's that pressure still isn't enough to get down into the groove. So it's the actual metal rollers that do that. So, and the felt that helps.
Okay.
But if anyone finds another solution, do let me know, because I'm all up for doing things the wrong way or just trying adapting processes. So yeah.
Yes, I expect a car will leave an interesting tread pattern. Agreed, because car tires are not really flat. Or
No,
if they
exactly.
are, you should get them changed.
I have seen online though someone use a car, not for these plates, but I've seen it with lino. People have used a car where they've driven that over because they haven't got a press. That's the main thing for printmaking. It's that expense of getting a press, and I think that's, you're looking at a few £1,000s to get one, and you need the space. The thing with wanting to work from a dining table is you're limited, aren't you, to what you can, what equipment you can put on a dining table. So these craft presses are good for that.
Another artist did Ford Run print in 70s. Oh, okay. All right. I want to thank everybody for coming. Please check out our other programs. We do everything from educational, interfaith, cultural. We do about 4 to 10 a month of different programs. So please check us out. I want to thank Karen again. Thank you very much. This was very interesting. I want to save all my boxes and like make pictures with them now. So if we don't have any more questions, we're going to end this for the day. And I want to thank everybody for attending.
Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Paula, for inviting me.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.